To the Lewiston. Welcome to the Lewiston Public Works Advisory Commission regular meeting, December 18, 2024, second floor conference room of the Bell Building if you want to attend in the future times. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And the first on the list is citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the commission on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the commission or staff. In consideration of others wishing to speak, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Do we have any citizen comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is, the only thing on the consent agenda is approval of the October 16, 2024 meeting minutes. Now we can either remove that to items 5, where items removed from the consent agenda and have a discussion on this, or we can approve the October 16, 2024 meeting minutes. Do we want to remove or approve?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. On to item 4, the consent agenda, the active agenda. US 12 Interstate Highway Blue Bridge. Presentation from Washington State Department of Transportation, Randy Giles.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. It's Randy Giles. It sounds like a J, but it looks like a G. I mean, it's a G, right? So thank you. Then I'm going to try to throw up a presentation here. Let me know if you can see it. It seems like I'm always tech challenged. So give me just a sec. I'm sorry. Okay, so I think you should be able to see my screen. Can you see my screen? It's the letter from the Public Works Advisory Commission.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So the presentation is kind of in response. It's been a while, but it's in response to the letter from the Public Works Advisory Commission sent back in March to Paul Gonseth with WashDOT. So the plan is to try to address the questions raised in the letter and maybe try to give you a little additional information as well. So I'm going to start my presentation and let me know if you can see my presentation. So. Okay, can you see the slide? Okay, so just a little bit of background on myself. My name is Randy Giles. I'm the Assistant Region Administrator for Design and Program Management. What that means, I have engineering staff that will develop our capital projects. And I also look at needs within our region and then projects and programming projects to address those needs. So our region, kind of just a little background in Washington, we're broken into 6 regions. Our region extends from basically North Bend, it goes across Snoqualmie Pass, across I-90, Ellensburg, Yakima, Tri-Cities. It's kind of an L-shaped region. It ends, it goes through Walla Walla, and we extend all the way down to Clarkston, Lewiston area. So I've been with WashDOT for about 33 years. I got a degree in civil engineering from the University of Utah. So I'm neither a dog nor a cougar or a vandal. I work with a lot of those people though. So and my experiences with design of highway projects and construction administration, and I also work with local agencies for their federally funded projects as well. So, okay, enough about me. We want to talk about the Interstate Bridge. This is not the Interstate Bridge. This is actually the original bridge built in 1899. So here's just a little bit of fun facts. You guys may or may not know this. The current bridge replaced this older bridge, which was actually a toll bridge when this was constructed. they actually charged a toll of 5 cents if you want to cross it by foot, or 10 cents if you took your horse and wagon across it. So it became a free bridge in 1913 when it was purchased by the state of Idaho and the Asotin County. Okay, so the current Blue Bridge is a steel truss bridge, removable. It has a movable span. It had a higher clearance before the Lower Granite Dam was built, but it currently has a clearance of about 40 to 45 feet, depending on river elevation. This was the main connection between the communities of Lewiston and Clarkston until the Southway Bridge was built, and that was probably built in response to the construction of the dam and the fact that we saw a lot more use of the movable span and more congestion on the interstate bridge. And so now we have several routes across the Snake or the Clearwater rivers connecting the two communities. So we maintain and operate, and we constructed this bridge through an agreement with the state of Idaho. That's a pretty old agreement. It goes back to 1938 when we first built the bridge. It's interesting that Idaho was originally responsible to operate and maintain the movable span, and they could have delegated this to the city of Lewiston. But with the first supplement, this was transferred, the responsibility was transferred entirely to Washington. So we maintain, operate, preserve this bridge as a shared asset between Washington State and the state of Idaho. There's a long history of rehabilitation projects. It's almost 85 years old. And so we've painted it 5 times. It's currently due for another one. We're actually in the process of getting a project prepared to advertise, and we've had to delay that now due to some budget issues I'll get into in a little bit. But over the years, we've done, several rehabilitations of the electrical system, modernized equipment, added navigation lights, fixed the barrier system on the traffic. And then we've replaced the deck or the joints a couple times as well. One of the questions the commission asked was about routine maintenance. So once a month, our local washed-out maintenance staff does a mandatory bridge raise. This closure lasts about 10 minutes. And then crew members walk the length of the bridge. This allows for a quick inspection of the different components as well. They can look at the drains. They look at the joints, mostly they look at the movable span and make sure it's operating correctly. And then bridge drains are formally inspected and cleaned by our local maintenance twice yearly. So that's the maintenance schedule for our bridge drains. And then once a year, our bridge crew, so we have a region repair crew, will come out and meet with our headquarters bridge preservation office and inspectors, and they'll do a full bridge inspection on the structure once a year.
Can I ask a quick question about the drains? You said you clean twice a year.
That's correct.
When they go out to inspect them or to go out and clean them, I should say, have you ever noticed that they have been terribly clogged where they've required maybe like from silt or debris or anything like that, where you've had to maybe do some, further cleaning of them to open them up?
That's a great question. I can't answer. I can get back to you. I can check with our maintenance staff. I do know that the drains are relatively simple in design. And I was going to talk about how many we have, but they're a roughly square drain that funnels into a 4-inch pipe, and then that pipe goes straight down for a very short distance, and then it just drains right into the river. So it's not a really complicated drainage system, but it is kind of on the small side. So it could get clogged with debris. So my presumption is that they go in and they pull out the debris, or they poke it down, or they clean out that small area down to the pipe, and then again there's a short distance of pipe that just goes straight down. So
and when you ask them, or I was just curious if it was like jet rotted or how it was, how do they go about cleaning something of that length?
Okay, I will find out the answer to that. I'll get back to the commission. So I was going to touch on kind of how things are laid out. I'm an engineer. I kind of like to go through this stuff. If it's a little too technical, I apologize. What I tried to put on the slide is an aerial view of the bridge, and then it broken down into 3 sections. We've got the west approach, which is on the Clarkston side, and then we got the steel truss section in the middle, and then the east approach, which is a little longer on the Lewiston side. So here's some figures about the bridge. It's 1,423 feet end to end. The steel truss section is 500 feet. It's composed of a 200-foot movable span and then 150-foot side spans on either side of that. The grade of the bridge, which is, if you look at that picture, that bottom view is a profile view of the bridge plans. These are actually the bridge plans from the original construction drawings. And I put some arrows on there on the direction of which water would flow. So on that west approach, the grade is about 4.3 down towards the steel center spans. It's about 218 feet long. It has 8 drains. So each one of those spans has a drain on either side of the bridge. And these drains are about 13 by 10.5 inches. The opening grate is. Again, that drains to about a 4-inch pipe that goes straight down. And then the steel truss section has 16 drains evenly spread throughout the steel truss section. It's relatively flat. It's actually built on what a crest vertical curve. So it's symmetrical about that. It's about 1 foot higher in the center of the bridge than it is on either end. And it's kind of shaped like a very flat parabola. Anyway, so it would drain from the center of the bridge back towards Clarkston, and then from the center of the bridge towards Lewiston, if there were no other like flow contributing factors, which may influence how water flows across that bridge. So if it, just water came down, it flowed in a certain direction, this is how it would flow off the bridge. And then the east approach is a longer, it's composed of 10 spans, slightly longer spans, and it slopes about 2.8% down towards the Lewiston side. And again, these drains go directly into the river. There's no water quality treatment component of the storm drain system on the bridge. So in this picture, though, you can see I included a section of the Clarkston side of the bridge. And that's the intersection of Bridge Street, 2nd Street, and Diagonal, where there's currently the roundabout project being modifying that intersection. But from that point towards the river, it does slope down towards the river. So we know we are getting probably some contributing area from the roadways in that area. Any water that it doesn't go into the storm drain system for Clarkston is likely coming down the road and then down that slope towards the bridge. And then the next slide will illustrate just kind of what happens when we do get additional water onto the bridge. This picture was taken on the June 9th of 23. So I think this is kind of the event that maybe triggered the questions from the commission. I'm not actually sure where that the picture was given to me, so I'm not sure its source or who took it or how it was provided, but I was told this was on the June 9th event. And so you can see there's 6 inches of standing water in various places. The foreground of the picture is actually that low spot that's created by the downslope from Clarkston onto the bridge. And then, so that is kind of the low point and where I would expect to see that the highest amount of water is basically where that white truck is on the bridge. We went back and researched the event, kind of the reoccurrence interval or the records for the storm. We don't have a way to measure it directly at the bridge, but in the area we found there was a just under ½ an inch of rainfall to the north of this location, and then about 3/4 of an inch of rainfall south of this location. So we know we got somewhere between ½ an inch and 3/4 of an inch of rainfall in roughly about a ½ an hour at the bridge. So this translates to roughly a 2-year event. So we would expect to see a storm or event of this frequency come around every couple of years. We talked to our drainage folks or our maintenance folks, and they sit and So some of this I'm just learning. It's kind of interesting. I wasn't aware of the situation until just recently. And I've heard that, they've watched some similar things happen on this bridge, and they noted that while drainage can quickly become overwhelmed during a flashy event, it typically clears pretty rapidly after the rain subsides. So the commission asked that we talk about what our plans are, and this is where I don't have great news. So I don't have a current program project or a project plan for the bridge replacement. I mean, it's an old bridge. It's 84 years old. It's rated in pretty good condition. We use a National Bridge Inventory system to rate our bridges. It's rated in fair condition for the things we look at, which is our deck, our superstructure, and our substructure. And so it wouldn't normally program for a replacement until it gets closer to being in poor condition. So I don't have a replacement project program, and I don't have a drainage improvement project program. Right now, our focus has been on preserving the assets that we have, like looking at culverts that might fail, and then we lose a roadway because of that. So we're really been focused on preserving our assets from failure or catastrophic failure. And then we also have a small program that we look at for environmental retrofits when it comes to stormwater, but that has been typically focused on environmentally sensitive areas. So the other thing I wanted to mention is right now Washington is in kind of a not a great place when it comes to funding. So we have projected revenue shortfalls where we can't necessarily do everything that was put into the budget, that was the expectations by our legislature. And so we are actually pausing a bunch of projects. The bridge painter that I mentioned earlier has been kind of delayed until we can figure out and kind of match our revenue to the needs that we have. And so that project's been pushed out at least a couple of years. So what future efforts are we looking at as it relates to the bridge drains and the drainage on US 12? I think I want to say we are at least aware of the issue now. I have a hydraulics engineer who was a little bit surprised as well, but we've been talking about trying to program or at least propose a project that would look at increasing the drainage on the bridge itself. That's a bit of a challenge in that the bridge right now is kind of grandfathered in for stormwater. If we were to design it now, we'd have to look at treating for water quality. And so if we modify the drainage system on the bridge, we'd probably be looking at having to meet newer requirements for water quality treatment, which can get challenging and fairly expensive. And so, but we might be looking at trying to make things better, right? Because right now the water just drains directly to the river, so there is no treatment. So we might be looking at trying to get better drainage and then some kind of exemption to not necessarily meet full standards when it comes to water quality treatment. We also would want to look at potentially intercepting the water that's coming down Bridge Street from Clarkston. I think the bridge necessarily hasn't changed in 80 years. I think what potentially has changed is the development and the amount of impervious surface off the bridge, which is probably contributing to how much water we're getting coming down the road. So we could look at trying to intercept some of that water before it got onto the bridge. Stormwater in Washington is a little tricky in cities, managed access routes. We call them state routes that are on a city street. It's where by statute in Washington, the city or the local agency is responsible for stormwater. So I think if we were to look at doing something like this, we'd have to be working with Clarkston, check to see if they've got any ongoing efforts or current efforts to look at their storm drainage, maybe look at some kind of partnership to where we could work on a joint project that would keep some of this water potentially off the bridge. So those are the things that we're thinking about doing, but I don't have any necessary plans right now in place. I mean, we're just right now trying to come up with what are some of the solutions, because I don't think we can fix it all, especially given our budget constraints right now, but I think there might be some things we could do to try to make it better. So, and that's the end of my presentation. I hope I answered at least some of the questions that the commission had. You probably have a lot more, so I'm happy to take questions or comments at this time.
Questions, the chair? I do have one more question. When I was doing a little research, about this bridge, and now that you've, explained it was, replaced and whatnot, I did find that it was registered under a historical bridge category. And so I was curious because you mentioned, in your presentation that, one of the items was to possibly replace it, no idea in the future, or do drainage plans. And would that type of designation interfere with some of that possibly? And and did I read that correctly, that it was designated as a historical bridge?
It could be. We do have a lot of structures that do get designated as historical. Usually when they're 50 years old or older, they can be designated for inclusion on the register. And it's usually if they're unique. And this one, I think it's probably unique enough that it could be, and I can check to see if it's historical. But to answer your question, it would impact the process that we would have to go through to replace, to replace it or modify it. But it doesn't preclude us from doing that. And usually we would have to do some type of mitigation. It could be recording of what made it historical or what made it unique, and preserving that record so that people could learn about the bridge, because it would no longer be there once we get done replacing it, right? So it's usually just an additional effort that we would have to do to document and mitigate the removal of that historic. But we do go out of our way to protect historic things when we can. But given the nature of a bridge, it would if it were to be replaced, there's no way to protect it. It's just a matter of mitigating its removal. So.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're aware that there's a roundabout going in pretty much right next to that bridge on the Washington side. Is there any thought, or was there any thought of the drainage from that going into or creating more issues with drainage?
No, we are quite aware of the roundabout. In fact, I was the local programs engineer at the time, so that position actually tries to assist the local agencies in their projects. And so I was fully aware of that project. When the city proposed that project, we worked with them closely, and we did look at the drainage of Bridge Street. We didn't require them to intercept all stormwater, because the project actually decreased the amount of impervious surface. So that's a pretty wide open intersection as it currently stands. When we finish with the roundabout, it'll actually have less contributing area, and it will utilize the same storm drainage system that it has. So it kind of made things slightly better. It didn't go back and retrofit everything to meet probably all the drainage that is coming down on the Bridge Street. So so yes, we were aware of it. It kind of had an exemption from having to do stormwater treatment, because it actually reduced the amount of pavement at the end of the project. So.
Thank you.
One real quick thing. Hi, Randy. This is Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director for Lewiston. I don't have any questions, just some comments to build upon what Randy already said. So when we did the resurfacing of the Southway Bridge, kind of a similar, not a similar project. They're going to paint the blue bridge. We just resurfaced the travel lanes on top of the bridge. And we had, in the setups, it's a completely different bridge, completely different period of time of construction, but it's the same drainage pattern necessarily. You put holes in the deck and it drains directly into the river. And so when we took that project on, we only did, much like the painting, it wasn't going to trigger any significant upgrades to the stormwater, because it's not significant enough. So we did look at it as part of a consideration for the Southway Bridge, and maybe possibly picking up a grant, because of the sensitive, fishing waters or whatever. What ended up happening is the Army Corps owns shorelines on both sides, and that's federal land. And so an effort to try and do something above and beyond what we were going to do on the surfacing the bridge snowballed into something that was gonna be much greater to try and figure out. So the Army Corps' property, right, whether you're on Lewiston side or the Clarkston side, you're gonna have to deal with the Army Corps. I mean, it's not impossible, but they are literally the low spot before you get on that bridge. So anything you do, you're probably city's not gonna have right of way or property to store any additional stormwater runoff without going into Corps property. So just, there's always good ideas, and then there's the things that.
Right, and actually we are there by, I think we're there by easement through with the Bureau for that little strip between the roundabout and the bridge itself. And so, yeah, so we thought about it, and if the land ownership was different, we probably it would be a lot easier, but you're right, that just adds one more complexity to trying to be able to put in a treatment system, because now you'd have to work through the federal government to put it on their property for the most part.
Yes.
Quick question here, related to that. Who is the regulatory authority for stormwater on that type of structure?
We work through our Department of Ecology when it comes to stormwater, Clean Water Act. And so they, in Washington at least, they regulate stormwater. This would be interesting because we probably have to work with maybe regulatory in Idaho, which we're not quite used to, because half the bridge is on the Idaho side, or actually more of the bridge is on the Idaho side. But in either case, I mean, and we would have to work back through the Corps, which also has some regulatory. They regulate, waters of the U.S. So there are, both state and federal regulatory agencies we would have to work through to kind of get whatever we propose approved and permitted.
Okay. Thank you for coming, and appreciate your time and all the information you've given us, and it's been helpful.
I look forward to the last one. You can get back.
Oh, and the other items that you're going to get back to us on.
Yeah, should I just respond to is it Haley on the with the response? Is that the
Yes,
appropriate?
that'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item B, Main Road Corridor and Access Study. This is to review and discuss the July 2024 Thane Road Corridor and Access Study completed by Hiddleston and Associates, Inc. And it is an action item. If we want to take it, we don't have to when it says action item, but it is. So,
Okay,
You're up.
I'm up. So give you a little background. I'm gonna try and condense this all into a couple minute update on this. So I will go all the way back into the beginning of what my job is. So my job is to, we do planning, we do budgeting, and we do construction. And so this document that's in front of you today is a planning document. And this document was basically funded and driven by the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is not, the city is a member of that, but it is not the city. And so that is why you have not seen it before. I'm sure some of you may have seen it as part of the public outreach, but that's why you guys were not consulted on any of this, because it was not a city project, and I was not the project manager and not the driver on that. So essentially how the nexus of this project was going back to, the city is interested in investing and upgrading the improvements required for arterials. And we're talking about Main Street, 21st, Thane, Bryden, Snake River Avenue. Those are the arterial loop that I keep talking about. And so Bryden is in the surface transportation funding route slowly. It's probably gonna need an influx of cash to get that project to be successful on the local or another influx of a grant. We've already talked about Main Street and we'll continue to talk about Main Street in the coming year. 21st, we did the resurfacing of it and put that long-term Band-Aid on it, I guess we finished it this spring. And so now Thane was the next one that was the obvious choice, is trying to bridge that arterial loop. And in the conversations, anybody who's driven Thane knows it's just not the healthiest looking corridor. It's a 4-lane section. 4-lane sections are not the preferred section. And the accident data demonstrates that. Between the accesses onto Thane and the 4-lane section, I've got all of the accident data and can present it in whichever way you want to see it. Essentially, if you've ever driven Thane, you see people are trying to pass somebody, but then somebody's trying to take a left into a business and there's rear ends. Or Thane is a diagonal street across a square street grid. And so people are turning, looking into their blind spots, trying to cross 3 lanes of traffic to get across Thane. And the accident data is as clear as day that is the cause of a lot of that. And so the city approached the MPO and said, we would like to look at primarily the corridor and how we can make it function better, or what are our alternatives for the functionality of Thane, and then look at the accesses, because I think even us can say there's some wide open spaces where there's non-conforming grandfathered accesses that may contribute to some of these accidents. So the MPO, it was actually the largest engineering study that the MPO has paid for up to date. And the reason for it was wanting to get as much public input as possible. So they went business to business down the corridor and spoke with each property owner or business owner, got their feedback and say, what do you see, what works, what doesn't work, what's your opinion on your access? And what do you think we can do to make this better? They set up a booth at the fair in 23, and it was, give us everything you got. And it was pretty honest. I mean, a lot of people kind of honed in right on 10th and Warner. And again, anybody who's driven up to the high school, especially at 3 p.m. when school gets out, it's a mess up there. And so they focused primarily on that as a functionality, but they also talked about accidents and 4-lane section. And me in the beginning was, I pushed. I wanted a 3-lane section because you get that center turn lane, you get 2 lanes of traffic, you get less conflicts. Unfortunately, the volume of traffic, you cannot get a 3-lane. I mean, it would work for today, but within a couple of years, it would not function well, and we would be in the same spot we are and need to redo it. And so the two alternatives, essentially, you can widen it to 5 lanes, which is what we're considering for Bryden. But the way those businesses, that it prices us out really quick. So you couldn't really make that in a short-term fix to try and widen it to 5 lanes, other than, like at Bryden, you get some turn lanes in a few areas, but that's beyond what our budget is. It just doesn't pencil. So going to a 4-lane, we start looking at, are there areas where we can get some more conforming business accesses? Are there areas where there's some demonstrable dangerous turning movements? So raised medians to restrict turns. And if you've ever driven, I mean, there's some in Lewiston, there's some in Clarkston, there's some, I mean, any major city. And if you look, I now am finding myself looking at 4-lane sections. 4-lane sections have raised medians because you don't have a center turn lane and you've basically established a preferred pathway for more accidents. So that was what went into the study. And then they came back at the Home and Garden Show, and again, there's more outreach. There was a significant amount of public outreach, and which is why it cost so much money, because it was very slow and very deliberate along the way to make sure that we were getting, what do you think of it? First taking comments and then, throwing out different ideas. And the study is very large, and it basically went through, what if you restricted this turning movement? What if you restricted this? What if you put a signal there? What if you put a roundabout there? And went through, and some of these were really easy. You don't have space for a roundabout. You don't have space for a 5-lane section. And then it kind of vetted out some of these more preferred or more feasible corrections out there, or improvements. So what this document does now is allows us to move forward with grant applications, capital improvement, possibility for projects. Unfortunately, we took it to council in November and they did not accept it. So I'm bringing it to this board, and I have it up. So when I put this on the agenda, that was where I was kind of in purgatory. I didn't know, we've invested a lot of time and money on this study. It's still valuable. I'm sure there's some areas that we don't necessarily want to proceed, but I didn't have the support of the council. Since then, the mayor has put it back on the agenda for the 23rd. So they're gonna hear it again. I'm gonna kind of give them the same spiel I gave you. But initially I wanted you guys to say, how can we salvage this? But at this point, they may hear it again on the 23rd, may accept it, may come back with comments. So for today, it may be, I mean, we can have a conversation and discussion of what it is and what it isn't. But I would like for this group to have some homework over the holidays, go back and look through, maybe watch the council meeting and to understand, where they're going and maybe come back with some preferred, I mean, there's all kinds of multiple areas of improvements. They've outlined all different, they put them in 2 different tiers and they have the simple, easy, cheap ones and the expensive, long-term ones. And so I don't know that it's worth our time to dive into it specific today, but I think maybe in January or February when we come back and we have more certainty of where the council lays, because I get the impression they may want to say, because one of the unpopular opinions or feedback that I did get was one way to fix Warner, and it's kind of like what they did at Costco and at Clarkston, you just restrict that left turn. So if you're coming across Thane and you go, on 10th and you're going on Thane and you have that choice, you don't have to stop. The other 2 legs stop. You can go left, like you're going to the high school or the winery or Gateway, or you go right down Warner and then you can go that direction. You can still get to the high school. Restrict that left. So have a raised median so you cannot take a left. Gateway said not supportive of that. And that was just one business owner. We didn't hear from the winery or the high school or Les Schwab. So that one seems extreme. It would fix the functionality because it would move cars faster because you don't have that left. Left turns are a traffic engineer's nightmare. So, but it also would hinder the businesses. And so that was something that was identified as a possibility in the plan. So that was one that they weren't popular. So I will stop talking and give the floor back.
First of all, before you stop talking, can you tell them where to find the information?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So we can send you the link, but the MPO as a body adopted it. So, because they paid for it. We have the technical advisory committee, which is made up of, the city engineer for Lewiston, Clarkston, the county engineer, representatives, and they're the technical body that reviewed the nuts and bolts of it. Then it went before the policy board. They reviewed it, presentation from the consultant, and then they actually adopted it. So it is an adopted plan on the MPO's website, and we can send you the link. But if you just go LC Valley MPO, and they've got a drop-down menu that is plans and studies, and you can look at all the studies and everything that we've done to date.
There's been a lot of discussion. Councilor Kleberg and I were 2 that supported it. And because we're involved in it in the MPO, we were totally informed. And even though trying to inform council, they just had so many visions of the recs and everything, they just couldn't get beyond that, I think.
Yeah, and additional, Barney Metz from Lloyd, these types of planning documents allow not just the city, but other agencies to kind of forecast out and plan improvements. So the last thing we want to do is sneak some new project out and, then Barney's like, I haven't had a chance to replace any of the pipes under the ground. So it helps us plan accordingly as we go forward.
Great.
Or vice versa, where he's like, don't do that.
So yes, we'd like to hear from you too.
So what was the issue with the council not adopting? I mean, did they just not do their homework? Did they feel like it was gonna cost them money if they did? I mean,
They felt that, and I'm not comfortable going, I didn't really.
none of them gave any. So I guess my question, without putting you on the spot, would be, what would be the consequence of this to the city saying they adopt it?
I believe they did not like the raised medians. specifically
Right.
Warner, at 10th and Warner, they did not like raised medians and they felt restricting accesses to businesses was anti-business or would hinder the businesses.
But, and correct me if I'm wrong, this study, adopting this study wouldn't lock them in to say we have to do everything that's written here.
No, and
So that shouldn't have,
I did try to tell them that it is a non-binding.
Right.
And I did, and then Councilor Forsman, who's not here today, said,
Sure.
well, how do I know that you're not gonna build medians if we adopt the study? And I said, well, you fund the capital transportation budget. So if
Okay.
you don't fund raised medians or any of these projects that are identified.
sure. So my next question, you said it's on the agenda for Monday.
On Monday, yeah.
Can we go
Yes.
to the council
please.
meeting and say, please adopt this?
Yeah, and that was, if I had more time, I would go to the businesses, because businesses have provided comment on this.
Sure.
I just don't have the time to go put boots on the ground.
I understand, but no, that's just one of the things because we are of this body.
Yep.
I mean, sometimes,
Yep, and
We
if
can be-
timing was better, it would be, we would get a letter of support or, and that's why I'm saying that it would be great if this board, just because of the timing, if this board was able to say, hey, I hear you, maybe that one wasn't great, but Public Works Advisory Council thinks this plan overall is
okay, so I guess with that, could we agree and would it be any impact? Not that I have a plan to go to the council meeting and support this. Would it be okay for us or would it be too much for us to, as a commission, to send a letter of support?
You can take that, I mean, it's an action item, so.
Can we direct staff to do that
Yes.
and agree to
Yes.
that? Not that I want to give you more work.
But it's
But nothing like, too long or anything like that, but just like, there was a lot of stuff a lot of effort and time going into this study. By no means are you restricted to follow it to the letter, and we, in the interest of improving traffic in safety and public safety in the Thane corridor, we urge you to adopt this.
correct.
Did I just write the letter?
I think you just did.
I think you just did.
Sorry.
The fact that, that's people that are specialized in this are the ones that gave the information, did
Sure.
all of the research. And so, I
So
mean,
this is a case of, we should listen to the experts
yeah, and
and take their advice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to answer Commissioner Kelly's question, the meeting from an outside perspective had a very heavily slanted negative tint to the whole meeting. Part of it came from firefighter negotiations and a large crowd that was there to voice their displeasure of the city in support of the firefighters. And then you had an immense amount of businesses that are on thing that all said, we don't like this plan. And it really was about raised medians and businesses voiced that they didn't want people not having the ability to turn left to come into their business. And so the coffee shops and Gateway, and there were others. So you had the negative vibe from the firefighters, and then you had this in there, and I thought Dustin did a fantastic job when we replaced the partnership, but the plane was on fire and his
No, I
Dixie
understand.
cups of water weren't putting it out as it was getting ready to crash.
No, I can understand that. Okay. All right.
thank you very much for your,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting there and I didn't feel, I mean, I felt all of that, but you put it out eloquently. Thank you.
Barney, could you introduce yourself just for the record?
You
Sorry,
bet. Barney Metz, Lewis and Orchard Irrigation District General Manager.
thank you for your input. Yes, Laura.
So when was a formal presentation done on this, or was it only by you? Nothing personal, but
No.
was it only
So-
by you, or how in the context did this get before the
In
council?
context, there was so what I typically like to do is do something like this goes to a work session, which is what it was. And so the consultant who still had budget left from the MPO gave a presentation to council in this room on a work session. There was dialogue, there was back and forth. What, kind of the same thing that Barney's talking about. These work sessions tend to get a lot of stuff on it. They start at 3 and sometimes they'll go to 6 or 7, and there's just too much information. And so this was one of those meetings where we had 25 minutes. You can see the council was like, okay, let's move. There were some questions as to, it was evident Counselor Kelly, not Kelly, Jessica Klein, same Kate, did not approve of the 10th and Warner, did not approve of the raised medians. But there was no follow-up on that. And so again, another packed agenda with all the other public comment that was there. There was no presentation. My assumption, and typically, if I get pushback or I get questions, I will kind of preload stuff, but I didn't get anything. And so I just adopt it by resolution, and we'll vet out what we want, what we don't want in the CIP. So no, there was no presentation. Hindsight, there probably should have been.
Okay, so that's where I was kind of going with this because, and
There will be a presentation Monday now.
That was my next
Yeah.
question.
so thank you for, because so Monday you're going to have a presentation. Is it from you or is it from the consultant?
The consultant has closed out the contract, so it will be me.
So it's going to be you.
Yep.
Okay,
And that's the 23rd Monday.
okay. And this time it's not part of a work session. This will just be kind of a presentation and an overview of this, correct?
Yep.
Is there an action item that night to adopt it, or are you waiting to do that in January?
Same resolution, yes, the same resolution is in their packet. They can accept it, they can modify it, they can reject it.
So, I think having been around these for a long time and having them go through councils and having everybody kind of freak out about them, I don't know why they do. That's why I was asking, because yes, I can see why now with the agenda that night, everything going forward, for the lack of a better word, the vibe was not good that evening to digest something of this complexity. And sometimes people don't understand, and this is what it's hard to reiterate that when you're adopting these, this is just again, it's just a plan with recommendations. And however, my only concern is sometimes when these things come forward, make sure the resolution or something in there has a whereas where this is just recommendations. There is nothing binding in this to, the city or whatnot. From a liability standpoint, these are just ideas. The reason I'm bringing it up is because we talked about this is a safety item. And I can see where the council and everybody's getting nervous about, well, we don't do that. We don't like the raised medians and all this bit because it's a business thing, but it's also could be from an accident standpoint or whatnot. So I would put some sort of whereas just to have wiggle room that just recommendations, not binding, but somehow with regards to the liability portion of it. Because I can see where somebody would then later come back and say, well, you had this report, the city council approved it. There was a recommendation to have that, and now somebody got injured because of it. You should have put that, item in. And so sometimes just having one of those little, attorneys are great for that,
Yep,
right? A little
yep.
whereas the moving that forward, and maybe that's just enough to kind of give council reassurance that you're not, this isn't blood.
Yeah.
This isn't something that you're absolutely bound by. And I think people forget that you can also go back to engineers. These are just kind of some of the items in their bailiwick. Engineers you can go back and ask them, say, are there any other methodologies for this? That's what they're there for. They have creativity. I know engineers have a lot of heartaches with, I've heard them all over the years of, no, we don't like that. No, we don't like this. No, we don't like that. They always do that. But when you task them for creativity and say, what other items are out there nationally? It's amazing sometimes where they'll come up and said, over in such and such town in in Kansas, they had this new idea and they're doing X and we're finding really good success with that. And I think that type of reassurance to council members, I mean, if I was in their chair, I would kind of be like, yeah, I kind of see that. So I'm trying to wear their hat for a moment, just to kind of see why this got bogged down. That's why I was asking a lot
Yeah,
of questions, because that's a lot of pressure on a council, and especially in that type of scenario. So maybe that might help.
Yeah, I think I might have scared them a little bit. I mean, the one of the main findings of Thane, which you don't think about, is it's a route through business. So there's people who utilize it to go to a business. There's people who never stop at any of those businesses. They only go from work to home and want to get there as quickly as possible. And so you're looking at two totally different traffic patterns. And that's where I kind of went off on a tangent that I thought was digestible, but maybe it wasn't. That the big picture is we need to open up our transportation network. We need to get arterials to function as that route home out onto the East Orchards, while at the same time, we need to incubate some of these smaller like commercial nodes. And so Thane is a major commercial node, Bryden's a commercial node, 21st is a commercial node. And so trying to get people to the destinations they want to get there. And I said, this is a cheap option, considering you put some raised medians, you close some accesses, you reduce some accidents, you get people going where they want to go, and they learn new traffic patterns to get to the businesses they want to go. And that's a couple $1,000s versus, hey, let's put a new arterial out due east over some canyons. That's millions of dollars. And so this is a Band-Aid, because inevitably as Lewiston grows east, we're going to need to do that. But that's not what this is. So I think the accident data and the functionality is a better mouthpiece. I mean, that's still part of the conversation, is the short term.
I patronize a lot of those businesses over there, so I have to do the left turns or whatever in that area. And it's just a matter of, being patient and watching and stuff. My only issue on that whole stretch is the one by the school. I hate that intersection.
Oh, yeah.
Really, that's my only gripe out of all the intersections. That one I don't like.
Yep. Yeah,
Oh, yes.
Right there. So maybe I'm oversimplifying this. But what is the value in having or asking council to adopt this if it's non-binding?
It gives the, when we apply for grants, we usually include that resolution to say, we've studied it, and as a city, we've accepted the findings of this. That puts more weight into when we move forward to say these are improvements that we would, that we want to do for a grant. And there's a lot in here because of the proximity to the high school, the proximity to, the commercial node. There's a lot of availability in there. We can parse out some of these projects, not all of them. I mean, a lot of them we wouldn't support, but yeah, we want that resolution to say that the city adopted it. So for whatever reason, if the state came back and said, well, we got an application from Lewiston, they're asking for this project, but they didn't even accept the study. They don't,
Goes to the bottom of the pile.
yeah.
I mean, aren't you accepting a capital improvement plan, and then this essentially just provides the documentation to, I mean, if they're not selecting projects in here.
In practical, yes, yeah.
Saying like,
Yeah.
to me, it's like, if you go through this and you were to say, hey, which of these projects do you guys like or want? We can prioritize our capital improvement plan, or maybe your resolution on this says, hey, we've read this. Here are the projects that we want to do coming out of that. Something that's a little more.
Yeah, because this is where, that's staff had intended to take this study, and we're in the middle of CIP season, and so we were gonna pick out these projects, and 10th and Warner is actually not very high on the capital improvement plan. It's got to go up, and this kind of demonstrates that. So when we update the capital improvement plan, we go, hey, we did the study, people are saying this, so we're moving it, and you adopted that, and so if they don't adopt it the 23rd, we'll basically do that anyway. We may get a little pushback from the council saying, I told you I don't like that. Take all of these projects off with any raised medians, and then we're done. The same could be done if we adopt the plan and they say, hey, these are the two we like, the rest of them are garbage. But
I have a question. The businesses where the left turn is going to reroute them, have you taken one of those businesses and found a reroute and that you could maybe get their approval on before we go to council?
Yeah, none of the businesses that would restrict access or there's a side street, I think is it Warner? Because Warner comes and does that dog leg and it does not restrict a right out or left out. And there's a bus stop there. And so closing off some of those, the purpose, a lot of this in the study did not close access to anybody. It just moved it. And there was a couple of them, and I'm blanking on the names of the businesses that, you've got Coleman Station and you've got a lot of people coming and going and they're not necessarily looking. And so a couple of them were like, hey, we're competing, we have this wide open access. If you define the Coleman Station and then my access, it makes it much more cleaner for the approach.
So if we could have something like that, that we can have a business come and say, okay, we have.
I would like that. I just don't know that I have one in mind that would.
My only concern would be a lot of people go straight and then take the left and then go down Gun Club. So that's part of that route.
Yep.
Okay. There would not be enough area for the turn lane to queue that many vehicles to go left through there.
Mhm.
It's already, when there are a lot of people going left, it's kind of messy. So, trying to then go left or right in that center, so I'm just saying it's kind of,
Yeah.
you're redirecting, but the left turn in that area, it's gonna get ugly.
Yeah, and a lot of people, in fact, P1FCU bought the Wells Fargo. There was conversations with the city let's just put a roundabout right there. It doesn't work. We've had two different engineers look at that intersection to try and put a roundabout at Thane, 10th and Warner, and the way the legs come and it doesn't function. So it is not, people always say I'm a roundabout guy. I'm not, that will not be a roundabout. I don't know, but it needs to be fixed. I think that's, in my mind, one of the top 5 projects in the city outside of these major roads that need to be constructed.
Yes.
Madam Chair, if you want to address business advocacy against this project, there's 2 preeminent businesses that are conducting the complaint campaign against this.
Oh, there is.
Hot Shots and Gateway.
Hot Shots and who?
Gateway.
Gateway, okay, because I knew Gateway was
Hot Shots did an amazing job of getting the word out about how terrible this was because you were going to deny left turn access, which they thrive off of for their coffee. She did a really good job and she was very eloquent in her proposal, and she speaks to an awful lot of customers about how you're not going to be able to get your coffee if this goes to happen.
Where's the hot shot near that?
Which one?
Right next to across from Walanqua Stoves.
Yep.
On the east side of the road.
I know where that is, but I'm focused on 10th and Warner and that, and the 10th intersection, so.
And then Gateway had problems because they have 2 facilities.
Right.
Both
Yeah.
of those facilities would be impacted by whatever decisions get made, but they both presented at the public comment section, and prior to that, there was advocacy campaign against putting medians. It's the medians is the issue.
Let's see that.
I don't think anything else in the report people necessarily had a problem with as much as putting medians so you can't make a left-hand turn.
Yeah, I mean, there was a recommendation for a signal at
Thank you.
Preston and people thought they proved the signal at Preston. Raised medians.
So I guess we need to take an action.
I think we did by getting a letter of
Well, don't we
support.
have to vote for the letter? Do we have to take
Oh.
an action for that?
Motion to
Haley?
vote.
Yeah,
Motion?
a motion. Okay, let's make a
So-
motion.
I make a motion that we direct staff to form a letter to the city council in support of adopting the study.
And moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
So Haley and I will take basically Kevin's comments. And it'll be a short,
Okay.
and we'll put,
Enshrine it in the history of Lewiston.
And, you know, please, when you do make that presentation, please, if there's a way to reiterate, whether it's in the letter or through your presentation, the purpose of studies, they're, you know, just kind of, just, it's just, you know, and you can also say there might be a way to go back and ask them for different ideas.
and that's, I finally had some chance to do some work this morning. I've been in meetings all week, but that's my first, I got 3 or 4 slides. I don't want to make it a long presentation, but that is one of my key opening comments is, I think how I opened this morning. What did I say? We plan, we budget, we build. This is all part of the planning, and this is where it's really wide open for public comment. And Hot Shots participated in a lot of the public comments and public town meetings for Brighton, because they have 2 facilities right there. And I think I even said it at this presentation. I thrive off of public comment. That gives me insight on, you know, I am one of those engineers. I tend to get like this. And so the ability to hear somebody say, hey, I got a business here, I need access. Okay, let's work through that. So yes, I thoroughly enjoy it.
All right. Any other comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I didn't vote.
Oh.
But I was considering asking to log mine as a nay vote, just simply for the fact that I'm concerned about, am I okay to expand on why?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Concerned about the existing public perception propagating by forcing this through on a yes vote versus the value that it actually provides having council adopt it. So that's the only reason. I really don't have enough information necessarily to fully understand council's concerns. And so trying to push it through again, I'm worried that we're gonna stir up another hornet's nest with the opposition to it.
That's a good point.
It is a good point.
That's a very good point.
I think I probably won't satisfy the businesses, but I think I should bring that. The mayor requested it back, though it was not an action from the staff. And I think the mayor may speak to that, why, and he did send council an email. I think hopefully he will speak to it. Send a council an update as to how these plans are used and how valuable they are. And I probably should speak to, you know, what, we're not trying to do that. And open it, like I said, you can accept the resolution, you can modify it, or you can reject it. And I think in my meeting, or in the council meeting Monday will be, as the council, you are the elected body, you have all the latitude to reject this. My only request would be, please provide me some guidance as to why and where I can take this from there. Because if they reject it and they say, we don't like any of these projects, don't bring these back on the CIP, I then have direction of saying, okay, we need to look we got to go in a different direction on Thane. Because where I'm standing now is, we know there's accidents and there's access issues we need to address. We have a study that looked at it, but we didn't, like, where do we go?
Okay, good point. Yes, Ryan.
I was just gonna say that I would certainly support it if it suggested that if they don't adopt it, exactly that, put in our recommendation letter that, you know, some of that verbiage of, hey, this isn't, you know, it's not constructive to just say, we don't want medians. It's constructive to say, we don't want that because of X, Y, and Z. Let's look at some other options.
So you would like that in the recommendation of our.
I think so, yep. If they're not essentially saying, hey, if you're not gonna adopt it, provide some guidance, because this is clearly this is a concern. I'm assuming that all of the council members know that the corridor is an issue. So we can't do nothing.
Yeah.
But staff needs some direction from council.
Okay, yes.
I'll make a motion to amend. So I knew that's how we gotta do it. Motion to amend my motion. To include that.
Ryan's. Okay.
Commissioner Rader's comments within the context of the letter, which is
To
an
direct, yeah,
outstanding point. It's
come
a
back
very
with,
strong point.
with, constructive criticism or, direction that they would like to see, because this is not a problem that's gonna go away. It's only gonna compound, and if they ignore it,
Why?
it's not gonna fix itself.
Bernie, do you have any more comments?
Oh, good luck.
So
Well, thank you.
I moved to modify you've already made the motion, so I'm gonna second his
Mhm.
motion that we
Yep.
include Commissioner Rader's comment.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Speak up now.
All right.
Thank you. It passes. All right, moving on. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we're going on to 6, which is the director's report.
Okay, we're now 10 minutes over our time, so I will make this very quick to say in your pack. I have a lot for you guys in the coming year. We skipped November because something, I can't remember which item got bumped. In the coming year, I will be visiting you guys. I don't know if it'll be it probably will be January. I gave a presentation to the council about frontage improvements for engineering requirements. I made the joke, I went to the Disability Advisory Committee and I joked with them saying, City of Lewiston has the reputation of being the hardest city in the world to develop at, which is not true, but and a lot of the guidelines that we do are required by ADA, federal and state guidelines. And so what we're trying to do is clean up the code. So we want to find that sweet spot where somebody wants to come in and develop a brand new restaurant, manufacturer, whatever it is. They have some flexibility in the code where they can come in and not have to improve 4 miles of frontage for a tiny little warehouse, which some of the code right now is written really restrictive and we don't have a lot of flexibility. So we have a draft started and I'm going through, I went to DAC Lab this month. I'll go to you guys next month and we'll kind of sharpen up the language and get those code amendments in front of the council probably. I mean, we all only meet once a month, but it'll probably be in the spring, more likely in the summer to get that in front of them. So that's the big lift that we'll be doing. Main Street campaign, I guess you call it a campaign. The design is basically wrapping up. We'll be getting bond details and scope details, and then it will go out to the voters in May. I've been in communication with some of the downtown property owners that are interested to campaign for it. I cannot, but good for them. I will give them all the information, but I think that one has been coming obviously really hot and heavy as we're trying to get through all the information and get it in front of the voters, giving them enough information, but not painting ourselves in a corner because you're ultimately only voting for a dollar amount. We vote to spend $20 million or whatever it is for downtown for stormwater, water, street improvements. Once the bond passes, that's when we do final design. So this will be in front of PWAC many times here, if the bond passes. If it doesn't pass, it'll probably be in front of you guys too for finding an alternative. There's federal grants that will probably be rolling forward if that does not happen. And then finally, you will be, you got the updated draft on the traffic control plan. So we'll be getting that for your adoption, probably in the same meeting in January, because that one's basically button that up. So
Do we have dates of outreach for the bond?
no, not as of today, no.
Because I know we can't advocate, but we can educate.
Yes, we'll be getting, the mayor's been out, and I have not, I'm meeting with the chamber on Friday. And so I'm answering a couple of questions, so getting on the same page as them not getting on the same page, but getting them the information Friday. But the city, we're in a transition period because we're closing out the contract for the design engineer. And now, like what we did for the SRF, state revolving fund, for the water plant, the wastewater plant, we can spend money on informational flyers and get public meetings. And I mean, we've done a lot already, but now we'll be transitioning into, we've heard from you, this is what the design, preliminary design is. So that will be determined probably in the first couple of weeks of January, last week of December, first couple of weeks of January.
Didn't we go to Brian Lacy and Chris Davies and I were in a pop-up?
Yep.
So was it Under the Elms?
Yep, Art Under the Elms,
Okay,
we'll
so
be
we'll have
doing
that.
Rotary groups, and the Chamber's got me set to speak at their luncheon, I think in March or in the spring, so, yeah, there'll be lots of engagement events
So
scheduled.
count me in.
Yeah.
And I love to advocate,
and-
but I can't advocate.
And we have bond counsel and they've advised us, I mean, Lewiston is always very conservative with how we approach things and talking with them, they're like, the mayor or a counselor, they can do whatever they want. You're elected, you can even do it in the meeting. I can't go, I can't pay city employees to go do stuff. That's definitely a no-no, but
So
there's,
I can advocate?
Yeah.
I can? That's what I was doing, I thought.
yeah.
But then I keep hearing I can't. Okay. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, that, we'll get it very refined.
Oh,
We'll get it.
I didn't think she could advocate.
She cannot use city resources. I can
And then
advocate.
make copies and to
Yeah,
take
I
them out
can't
and
use,
distribute
yeah,
them.
I can't use, yeah.
But I can advocate for it.
They
Okay,
even
good.
said, the mayor said at a city council of, we're hearing this and I hope everybody out there votes for it. There's nothing to say he can't do that. I need correction from the bond council, but that was our preliminary meeting saying, you can't use resources, but you can tell people ask you.
I
You can give
thought
them.
I did when we went through that other bond. Okay. Yes, and then we're gonna,
I had, I was gonna bring it up at commissioner's comments, but since you brought it up. So I've been thinking a lot about the bypass because
Thank you,
one of the
Kevin.
things I've been shopping and doing stuff and I've been doing the bypass, et cetera. And I started thinking about it because it's happened a couple times now when we're directing that volume of traffic. Well, there's also a lot of people trying to turn into the parks. And I know it's Army Corps of Engineers and whatnot, but when I started, there's been a couple times in going through and there was like a lot of traffic. And then all of a sudden, somebody kind of slams on their brakes because they're trying to get in, to turn over, to turn into one of those parks and stuff. And I've done it as well. And people all of a sudden, are coming right, even though I try and put my turn indicator on to let them know I'm pulling into the parks to go up and walk and stuff. So that was a concern of mine. I just started realizing, I was like, oh my gosh, traffic is going pretty fast through there. Number one, we're going to be directing a lot of traffic that way. And I realize it's Army Corps, but it would be, there is property there to somehow have a little right turn, instead of right now, it's just you have to make a very sharp right to get into there. If there was just kind of a little lane so that they can just pull over quicker and out. So I'm just throwing that in for your consultant's review because one that patronizes those parks and loves them terribly. I enjoy them, but also I've been trying to take the bypass more just to kind of see what it would be, like. That's gonna be a problem. People slamming on their brakes, I'm just letting you know.
The bypass, and then as you come to this corner right here, because it's, you kind of get in the groove of 50 or whatever it is, 45, 55.
45, yeah.
And then you got
gotta
the
get that
35-mile-an-hour
Yep.
corner right there. Yeah, and
Just.
okay, moving on to 7, unfinished and new business. Commissioners' comments. Comments should not be related to an item currently before the commission or an item that may come before the commission in the foreseeable future and should be limited to comments, not discussion. Any commissioner comments? Seeing none, moving on to B, staff liaison comments. Comments should not be related to an item currently before the commission or an item that may come before the commission in the foreseeable future and should be limited to comments, not discussion. Any staff liaison comments? Seeing none, I ask for an adjournment.
I motion to approve that we adjourn our
Okay,
December meeting.
do I have a second? Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, speak up. Now motion passes. Okay.
I noticed you, I was like. I was catching.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.